Okay, good morning, everybody. Morning here from Spain, morning from Germany as well, where Patrick is based. And welcome to another Thursday morning in the Hub. So today we've got a new topic in the Hub, one that I don't think we've covered before. We're going to be delving into the world of ESP. And we've got Patrick Mustu here. He is a lawyer and legal English teacher. And he's bringing out a new book next year as well on the topic of legal English. So if you're interested in that niche within the world of ELT, keep your eye out for that. Okay, so without further ado, thank you very much, Patrick, for joining us this morning, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Before we start, we are going to talk about ESP today, and ESP stands for English for Special Purposes or English for Specific Purposes. And I just want to read a definition from the Oxford Dictionary so we all know what we are talking about. It's very short. It says, English or ESP is the teaching of English for scientific, technical, etc. purposes whose first language is not English. That's what it says in the Oxford Dictionary. Although I know that sometimes even people whose first language is English have difficulties. You know, teaching legal English, accounting English, English for engineers, and all of that. So this is basically what I'll be talking about. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen, and then we're gonna kick off. Just a second. So. Okay. Let's start. You've just witnessed the greatest intro the TEFL Hub has ever experienced, and you must be asking yourself one question. Will the rest of this bloody talk be as entertaining as that intro? Well, only time will tell. I'm going to ask and answer three questions: what, why, and how. What is ESP? Why should we teach ESP? And how can we teach ESP? I'm going to spend very little time on the what, because that's basically expanding on the definition I've already given you. I spent more time on the why, and I'll spend most of the time on the how. So what, English for specific purposes or special purposes basically means we specialize in a certain field and we teach certain people. For example, people from the banking or the insurance industry, or legal professionals, tax professionals, engineers, marketing, HR, whatever. Maybe some of you are already doing that, and I would just like to talk what it entails, and of course, to give some good reasons, in case you've only been doing, let's say, general English or general business English, why it could be interesting, to get into any of these fields. My fields are legal and accounting English, so I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to give you examples. So this is basically the vehicle I will be using. But, ESP can be any field, and it doesn't have to be even a specific field such as banking or insurance, some people position themselves as skills trainers, they teach negotiating or presenting, or they do intercultural training, Basically, anything where you say, I specialize in something is ESP. So this is all I have to say about the what, and now I'd like to talk about the why. Let's begin with legal English. When you look at the amount of publications put out in the last 20 years, it's absolutely overwhelming. And this is the first answer. There must be a reason. Publishers don't put out books for fun. They do it because they see demand and they see a market for it. And the astonishing thing here in these ESP fields I'll be talking about is that it doesn't stop, it doesn't stop at the international publishers. I mean, Cambridge alone put out 3 books, only Cambridge. And then we've got Delta and Routledge and Macmillan and Oxford and so on and so forth. And here on the bottom line, these books all come from national publishers. Actually, all of these come from a German publisher or from several German publishers. And this is a phenomenon we also have in several markets, that national publishers see a demand and they put out books on top of all of those books from Cambridge, Oxford, Macmillan, etc. So the first answer is really, there must be a reason and there must be a demand. And the same applies to accounting English. What I'm showing you here is, of course, not a complete list. It's a selection of books. But when you look at this, everything here on accounting, all taxes, So there's a whole array of course books that indicate that there must be a reason. So this is my first answer to the why. My second answer is, when you look at the course market, the schools, the providers, there's also quite a few that have popped up in the last 20 years that say, we specialize in a certain field. These are just some examples that specialize in teaching legal professionals, and these are all examples from Germany alone, by the way. Yeah, so they even call themselves Academy for Better Legal English. Yeah, or there's Jura English here, training for law officers, etc. And it doesn't stop there. There's also other providers that offer lots of things, including ESP classes. And what you see here, I mean, these are all examples from Germany because I'm based in Germany, so I know the market here. These 2, Forum and Management Circle, are, let's say, premium providers. So these are providers that usually go to a 5-star hotel. They ask for a lot of money, but it does seem to work. At the bottom end, we've got an institution in Germany called Volkshochschule, and this is a non-profit community college providing tertiary education in all sorts of fields, not non-academic, but still tertiary. And even there, they've got, legal English classes. And the same applies to accounting. When you look around, accounting, taxes, there's quite a few providers that offer classes that are dedicated to these fields, ESP. So this is the second answer to the why. We've got the publications, we've got the providers and their classes. Next answer. When we look at universities, these days, no matter whether you go for a BA, MA, whatever, whether you study economics, business administration, law, there's always some English involved, either as a lecture or even as a dedicated program, which means a year or 2 students do on top of their normal classes and lectures. And then they get a special certificate. So half of the law schools in Germany, they've got dedicated legal English programs, and the same applies to people who study business administration, economics, who might go into accounting and auditing later. So this is another indicator that ESP has really arrived and is part of our landscape. Here's another reason. You will be familiar with some of these abbreviations. They all stand for some exam or certificate. On the top line, you've got the Cambridge ones. Then you've got the IELTS, which a lot of people need who want to study in an English-speaking country. We've got the London Chamber of Commerce exams here. We've got the TOEIC and the TOEFL, the classic assessment tests, and then a few things which are developed in Germany, including the TELC. They're used in Europe, but they come from Germany. And here on the middle line, we've got 3 exams: ICFI, ILEC, and TOELS. And these are ESP exams. So even in the field of ESP, the exam providers, have branched out and say, we're going to offer an international legal English certificate and an international certificate in financial English. These are actually Cambridge exams. The ILEC, the top one, does not exist anymore. It was discontinued in 2016 because the figures have not been high enough for Cambridge. So they said, we will not continue. But it has been around for 10 years. The ICFE still exists. And there's another independent one called TOLS, the Test of Legal English Skills. So even in the testing exam certificate market, if you like, you've got a clear indicator that there is apparently an interest and a demand in ESP and even in taking exams and kind of proving to oneself or to potential employers or whoever that you have certain skills in a specific area. And after having given you all of these answers, I'd like to bring in the teacher's perspective. So why me? Why as a teacher? Of course, we've just seen that there must be a demand, there must be a market for it, clearly demonstrated by what I've just shown you. Another aspect, of course, specializing can go together with creating a USP for yourself. I've had, I think, a very typical career as a freelancer. So I started out, I worked for a dozen different language schools to collect my lessons. I accepted every offer that was made, no matter where it was, what it was, how much travel it involved, how poor the pay was. I accepted everything because I wanted to get this experience. I wanted to get into this. And then after a couple of years, I said to myself, I don't have a name. I can't compete with, Berlitz and Lingua and Wall Street. There's a zillion language schools and there's a zillion people that call themselves English teachers, but there's not a zillion that, call themselves specialists or ESP trainers or whatever. So it made sense to me to go into legal and accounting English because I have a background in law myself. I studied law, and as many other people, I slipped into teaching. It was not on my agenda from the very beginning. A lot of teachers who do this, they slipped into teaching. Not everybody studied teaching or education or languages, And this can help you when you say USP. This can help you, also to distinguish yourself from this pool of schools, providers, and other teachers. And creating a USP also often translates into better pay because you will be able to ask for more money. I know it's not very common to talk about money in teacher talks, but anyway, it can mean that you can ask for better pay. Usually ESP training is better paid. And this can be a reason if you want to make a living in the long run. Also, when you think about all the competition around and all these big names from school chains that unfortunately a lot of students fall for, but this can be a chance when you say, I specialize in insurance people or in bankers or in lawyers or in accountants. It can actually translate into better pay. That's also why some people say, for example, I'm a skills trainer. I teach business skills, meetings, negotiating, presenting in English. Or some say I do intercultural training, which is usually better paid. In Germany, it's part of the package of normal English training, but in many countries, intercultural trainers are like a separate bunch of people, and they can usually charge more money as well. So this could be a reason. And the last reason I've put up here, this might not be a reason for you, but maybe, well, it could be. If you like challenges, you can do that. Because, in most cases, you will not have a background in law or insurance or banking or taxes and so on. So it can be quite challenging. But when you accept the challenge and you do your homework and you get into this, it's possible. And I will talk about the how, because once you've recognized what ESP is and why you should be doing it, that there are several reasons and then there's a demand and a market and so on, then of course the question is, how can I do it and can I do it? So I'd like to move on to the how now. I've answered the what, I've answered the why. Now, the obvious thing is pick one of those course books I've shown you before, use that, I mean, there's a whole range of course books. So let's say if you want to teach lawyers or accountants or tax advisors or auditors, in that field, just pick one of those course books. Don't do it, because if you do it, this will happen. You will fail. And this is a very harsh statement, to talk about publishers. Usually we tell people how great course books are, what we've discovered, how useful they are, and so on and so forth. I'm a person who doesn't use course books anymore, but I'm not encouraging you to do that. I just would like to tell you why I'm making this statement, that you will fail when you use these course books. And please bear with me for a moment now, because I really have to explain this. This is a very famous English gentleman. His name is Alfred Thompson Denning, commonly referred to as Lord Denning. And Lord Denning was the most, or is actually the most famous, most influential, and most cited English judge of the 20th century. And he is mentioned in almost every legal English course books, also those that I showed you before. And this building here is not in ancient Greece, it's in the United States, and it's the US Supreme Court building. And these are the judges of the US Supreme Court. The reason I'm showing you these pictures is that the materials out there, the course books out there, usually focus on the UK and on the US. But when you do that in your classes, when you are not in the UK or US, for example, you teach in Germany, Italy, Spain, France, wherever, this will happen. Your students will tell you, well, that's very nice, but it doesn't do anything to me, So the thing is, it depends a bit in which ESP field you go into. I would say banking, insurance, maybe HR are pretty similar around the world. But when you decide to teach people in the consulting industry, legal advisors, tax advisors, auditors, business consultants, you will always find yourself and your students in a national setting. So the job of your students is not to explain how things work in the UK or in the US. The job of your students is to explain local national realities, in my case, German realities, to their English-speaking international clients. So the clients come up with a certain issue, and they say, I need advice on this. I want to set up a company. I want to know about corporate taxation in Germany. I want to know this. I want to know that. So they have to advise on German rules, on German regulations, on the situation of the local market in English. And then, of course, it's of little to no value to know everything about the UK or the US, And this is a quote from a student who bought one of those books from Cambridge. And you don't have to worry about carbolic smoke balls here, what they are. It's a famous case in English legal history. But anyway, here you've got the same thing. Very nice, very interesting, but I don't see the relevance for my practice. And in fact, when we take a look at those books, I mean, this is the table of contents of one of them. You see there's one page spent on the civil law system and all the rest of the book on the common law system, So people can read a lot about whatever, I'm not even going to tell you, but the jury and the adversary system of trial and all of these lovely words. Another one, Unit 2. Landmarks. Lord Denning, there he is mentioned. Lord Denning and the 20th century English law. The Theft Act, which is a UK act, Consideration, which is a common law principle that's not relevant in continental European countries, And it goes on and on and on. These books constantly tell us about the UK, the US, or maybe other English-speaking countries, and they come up with these principles that don't really exist or have relevance for our students, certainly for mine when I teach lawyers and accountants. The same applies to the accounting books, you know, they tell us a lot about the UK or the US. Yeah. And this is why, even if you settle with any of those books that I showed you, you as the teacher, you will have to develop supplementary materials, you know, that fit your student, the local market. So you have to talk to your students. I mean, if you don't have a background in this area, simply talk to your students. Ask them, what is relevant for you? You know, what does your day look like? Your day in office, you know, what do you need? You know, and I will show you what you can do. I just want to go through some of the publications and just prove it's always about, here it's about company formation in the US or in the UK and different words and all the terminology. This is about some laws that exist in these countries. Or here the court structures in the UK and in the US. All of this might be interesting. And I think it's also possible to talk about it as a side dish, but the main dish should be what is relevant for your students. And already, I think 14 years ago, in a letter to Business Spotlight magazine, this is a magazine read by a lot of English learners and a lot of English teachers as well here in Germany. This letter was published, you know, and here clearly a reader complained because Business Spotlight did the same. They've shifted a little bit since then, but Business Spotlight used to do it as well. It's always about England, America, Australia. For readers who want to talk about German, and you can replace German with any country you're in, yeah. For readers who want to talk about German realities in English, this is of little value. So, what do we have to do? Certainly not talk about the UK or England, Ireland, USA, Canada, or the lovely South Africa, which is the bottom picture. Very nice, very interesting, unfortunately irrelevant for those people. So, when we look at all of this, we should certainly not do it this way. We should do it in another way. Now, and this is the main part of my talk now, how? How can we do it? How can we make things relevant? It's all about connecting, yeah? You have to connect. So you have to connect, you have to make a connection between the country you are teaching in, and then, of course, your students. And now a big word comes up that you've heard many times before, authentic materials. I'm just using the Mona Lisa here for being authentic. Now, everybody tells you, oh, we all want to use authentic materials in our classes, and so on and so forth. And that's true. But the question is, what is authentic for our students when we teach ESP or when I teach lawyers and accountants? And that's very important to find out. So I have to look at the realities of my students and put the pieces together. I've got the people who consult. So they give legal advice, they give tax advice, they do accounting, auditing, etc. And then on the other hand, I've got the country they're in. All of my students are in Germany, and I'm based in Germany, you know. So I have to put these pieces together, which basically means advising clients. And now we go into the language fields that you're well familiar with. It means, of course, speaking and writing. So it's all about conducting client interviews and drafting client correspondence. So, and then you can break it down. You can take the speaking and the writing, and then you can identify a few items. I'm going to explain what the WASP approach is. This is a technique when you teach client interviews, conducting client interviews. But of course, you can come up with different formats: face-to-face, teleconferencing, video conferencing. A lot of these people also need presentation skills. Very often, lawyers, tax advisors, they they present, you know, they do seminars for their clients, you know, and they have to explain a certain area of law or taxes or whatever. Negotiating is also an important skill they need. So when we talk about this whole speaking thing, these are some of the areas consultants will generally need. When it comes to the writing side, of course, these consultants, they write letters of advice, they draft opinions, memoranda, and reports, and there's an array of documents, of course, you can come up with, but this all depends on the students, you know. So it's all about asking them. I mean, it's another big word, authentic materials. The other big word is, what is it? Needs analysis. I mean, you hear this a million times, so I'm not going to say anything. I just mention the word, but just ask the people. So this is the WASP approach for client interviews, and this is not my invention. This is from Cambridge. Okay, so it just stands for the different steps of a meeting. Basically, you welcome the client, you have to elicit information, and then you basically advise, and then you say goodbye. That's all that's behind the WASP approach, you know, and it's not my invention. It's from Cambridge actually, and you find this in the Cambridge books as well, in the legal English course books. Yeah, so this is not rocket science anyway. It's very similar to other meeting language you normally teach. So the big question is then, when we've got the students, and I'm just giving you an example now that relates to tax advisors. The question is, what do tax advisors do? What do my students do? And then you might say, oh, what a stupid question. Tax advisors give tax advice and they prepare tax returns. What sort of question is that? But that is not true, because you have to dig a bit deeper and you have to identify what they do. And here in Germany, for example, and this might be very similar in other countries, they do all of this. They do all of this. So you are left with an array of areas, topics, and issues you can expand on. Of course, not every student will cover every area, but you can ask them, what is relevant for you? But this is what you have to do as a teacher when you say, I want to go into ESP and I want to teach accountants, for example, you know, what are their topics? You know, you must identify them before anything else. And once you've identified them, you can move on and you can make that connection by coming up with materials that are relevant. For example, when we talk about taxes in Germany, because my students do not advise on any foreign jurisdictions. They're not qualified. They have no knowledge. They've got international clients. They need advice in Germany. So only bring up things that exist in Germany, you know. Why should I bring up taxes that exist in other countries but are not relevant for my students' practice, you know? And this is a dialogue I once wrote ages ago, and the connection is very simple. So I've got a UK national here living in Germany on the one hand, and I've got a German tax advisor on the other hand. This is quite simple. And the beginning of this dialogue serves something we are all interested in, small talk. Yeah. So you can even use the beginning of such an interview to cover small talk, you know, if that is something relevant. I mean, for most people, it is relevant, you know, because it's not, I mean, you know this anyway. I don't have to talk about it, you know, that some people like to be very direct in continental Europe, you know, want to get straight down to business, you know, no small talk. What is small talk anyway? It's completely irrelevant. Why should I talk about the weather, you know? It's raining all the time anyway. So this is it. But you see the connection here. And and then you can, you know, you can design all sorts of exercises, gap filling, multiple choice, you name them. I mean, you know them all anyway, you know. So you've got this like meeting scenario where you've made the connection, to the country you're teaching in. And then, you know, you come up with some follow-up exercises and, you know, cover things which are relevant in the country. Of course, when I teach accountants, people react to numbers and accountants definitely react to numbers. So incorporating a few number exercises is also a good thing, but this is specific to accountants. Another example, connection, There's somebody talking, a German lady talking to a Polish colleague, but the topic is the German, something German. Yeah. In this case, it's the German trade tax system. Yeah. So writing. Again, I've put this into Germany here, Berlin in this case. So the people are in Berlin. The tax advisor is in Berlin. There's a letter. They want something from their tax advisor. And then there's a couple of things, a couple of tasks, but it relates to Germany. Yeah. Calculate the tax. I mean, this is specific for accountants. You don't have to go there, of course. It's just some examples that you see the connection that I'm talking about here. Some people like case studies. So when you design a case study, that's also an option. You know, it's just another way of approaching things. But again, why place it in Delaware or in, I don't know where, Jersey? A wind park in Germany, in this case. And, you know, of course, this is quite complicated. I mean, who knows what a sale and leaseback transaction is? Even what English teacher knows that? So this is really high level. And I just want to tell you and show you, it doesn't have to be rocket science. Look, for example, I've drafted this here. You've got somebody from England. He's just moved to Germany. So there you have the connection. Okay. And then he has some issues. He wants to consult a lawyer and he has specific questions. And it doesn't matter. In this case, it's about deductions for Social Security and it's about pension contributions and so on. It can be any topic. You know, just ask the person. If the lawyer says, I'm an employment lawyer, you come up with an employment law topic. If he says, I work in company law, you talk about companies, whatever. But the connection is important because this is what makes it relevant. Your student will talk about things he will also be talking about in his practice, you know? So this reflects his work. And then you can vary, you know, you can do role plays, but you can also come up with, you know, I mean, of course, this is a role play as well, a meeting scenario, but in preparation, there's an email, okay? So there's a new client, he sent you an email, explains what happened. Again, the connection to Germany, I moved to Germany, I do this, and I have a specific question, you know, and then you can do it. Here at the bottom, prepare and hold the meeting. Yeah. So as I said, it doesn't matter. We all know English as a lingua franca. The people can come from anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be England even, you know. You can introduce a variety of accents as well, you know, no worries at all these days. I'm actually in the production of the second edition of my book for tax professionals with Cornelsen, which is a big publisher in Germany. And we've decided to use other people than people from England and the US, you know. So there will be people from Asia, from Africa as well, you know, and from South America. So you can branch out, you know. It's a world language. And this is authentic material, for example, you know, I mean, then there's a situation, the guy's here in Germany, he received a letter from his bank, you know, it's a bit complicated. So, and he has done some investments, so he needs some advice. And the way I got to this exercise is very simple. I used to be a customer of Citibank and I received that letter myself. Oh, so I made an exercise out of it, you know. I thought, what happens if this letter in German comes to English person or somebody who doesn't know German well, you know, and then, ooh, what is this about? So quite simple. I match something that is authentic and I make the connection to Germany in this case, where I live and teach. Or even if you are, but this only applies if you are proficient in the language, you know. So, I mean, I take it one step further. Sometimes I give them things which are actually in German. And I ask them to explain them in English because this is what they have to do. This is, for example, a court judgment. And once a lawyer has litigated a case, went to court, you know, he has to explain this to the client. So there's something coming up. He has to give it to the client, but he also has to explain it, you know. So this kind of reflects what my students do, you know. I mean, all they do is in German, of course. Everything they receive is in German. But their clients are not proficient in German, so they have to explain it. But as I said, even with the stuff I showed you before, you can do fine, you know, even if you stay completely in English. This is, of course, only for people who are proficient in both languages. This is authentic material as well when you teach, of course, accountants. Not a good idea when you get sick when seeing numbers, but, you know, if you don't and you want to teach accountants, this is authentic. Identify topics that prove to be controversial in group activities, you know. For example, VAT in Germany is such a topic because there are different VAT rates, and to many people, they don't make sense, you know. Why are some products taxed at a lower rate and some products taxed at a higher rate? Usually say the more useful products, you know, or the products we need every day, or they are products that are really important. They should be, you know, they should be taxed at a low rate. And this opens really the door to a great group discussion and controversy, you know, because especially German accountants, you know, are very sensitive towards these things because their clients are affected by this, you know, depending on what products they sell or in which industry they work. Yeah, and then there's nothing wrong with, there's nothing wrong about talking also about, let's say, England or America or whatever, you know, especially pointing out how things work in those countries, you know. And then when you teach lawyers and you talk about companies, you know, the term board of directors is definitely something they should know. What does it mean in the UK, in the US? Because in Germany, it means something else, you know, because in Germany, we've got 2 boards, not 1. And this is also interesting knowledge, you know, comparative knowledge. Then, of course, you can identify terminology that often gives people problems, you know. Here's just an example how to distinguish the terms affiliate, associate, and subsidiary, you know. And this is also where you have to do your homework if you're not familiar with these terms, you know. Any technical vocabulary, you know, this is maybe one of the challenges when you decide to go into ESP. You have to do some research, of course, beforehand. But I'll even show you how you can do that at the end, okay? So here's the thing. And then you can, you know, basically use this as a basis also for any activities, any exercises you can design, you know? Reading comprehension, listening comprehension, role plays, whatever, you know? You can design all sorts of scenarios. But bear in mind the connection is important, you know? So when you come up with these lists here, UK, US, give them the German as well, or discuss it with them at least. You can also develop this in class, you know. You can ask the students, oh, could you explain, you know, corporate structures in Germany to me? What sorts of companies are here? What can I choose? What are the features? What are the names, etc., etc.? And then you've got this comparative thing, you know, and this definitely is important and helps. And then again, you know, tax avoidance, for example, just identify topics that are of interest to your students. Tax evasion and tax avoidance is definitely a topic. So is there Delaware in Germany? Yeah. And in a way there is, at least there was, and in a way there still is. But anyway, this is something that's also useful when identifying topics. Every now and again, you should go for controversial ones and sensitive ones. Finally, when you look at all those books from Cambridge and Oxford, I told you it's always about the UK, US. There's nothing wrong with having it as a side dish, as I told you before. There's nothing wrong thinking outside the box and then just having a look. But maybe, you know, as the last page in a unit, so to speak, yeah? And even then, it's still possible to make that very important connection. So here is a text on the UK. So you can come up with an intro. Then you can do the reading comprehension. And then you can come up with an over to you. And in the over to you again, you make that connection. So people talk about what they know. Yeah, they don't know much about the UK, US, but they know how things work in Germany, Italy, Spain, or wherever they are. And then you can get into a very nice group discussion, group activity, whatever, you know. So there is this connection. JP Morgan case, that was, I also showed you that from a book. Fine. That was a big case in the US. You can come up with some intro, then you can do the reading, and then you can come up with an over to you. And then you draw the comparison to the country you are teaching in and where your students are and what they can say, about this. So this is really what it is all about. It's all about connecting. And the only question left is now, can I do it? Can I do it? I don't have a background in law and accounting and whatever. I'm just an English teacher, a poor English teacher. I don't know anything. Can I really do it? And I could go for the Obama and say, yes, you can. If this is your job description, I would say don't do it. Yeah, this is because all you need is to be a native speaker. And I would say, if you say I can do this because I'm a native speaker, I believe you will fail. The same applies to all other teachers. If they just say, okay, I studied English, I have a degree in English, I've got a TEFL certificate, now I can teach lawyers, now I can teach tax advisors. This is not a good idea. So if you are swimming in this pool here, these job adverts where they often, I mean, the one here, for example, it says no experience needed. You just have to be native speaker. The same here, Here, there's even discrimination within the native speaker community, because some job ads call for certain countries, certain nationalities, the usual suspects, excluding the 80 other countries where people grow up with English as their first language, And this here is appalling white teachers, and you might think this is an exception or something extreme, but it's not. I could show you dozens of job ads, especially in Asia, that call for white or Caucasian teachers. So, but what I'm trying to say here, my point is, it's not enough to be just a native speaker or to be just proficient in English. It's very obvious when you say, I want to teach accountants, this should not make you sick, okay? So figures you should not get sick at looking at the figures. You should not get sick at looking at such terminology. It's very technical language, yeah? But if not, it's fine, You can teach accountants, lawyers, because all you need is a friend. And there are lots of friends on the internet. Two of them are our much beloved Wikipedia. Of course, not beloved in the academic community, but still, outside, lots of people use it. And it is very useful. Wikipedia will answer a lot of questions you have, also about the country you're in, how things work, what the rules are. If you go into the field of accounting, finance, tax, Investopedia is a similar website, which is basically telling you and explaining lots and lots and lots of terms, So this is how you can do your homework. All you need is a friend, and you have to find it. And there's lots of websites. We make accounting easy to understand for free, and you can spend hundreds of hours, if you like, on this website alone, clicking on all these things here. If you say, oh, I have to get into this, and I have no idea what are accounts payable, what is depreciation, and then you get explanations, and the internet is full of these friends, There's even exercises you can do. Here it's English for accounting, for example, or here, exercises, accounting and finance. There's lots of audio, if you're into podcasts or listening or whatever, either for yourself or your students. Another podcast website, Business English Pod. And even the laws, I mean, this is hardcore, of course, but even the laws are available in English. This is a list with German laws. They are accessible online. So should that be relevant, you can even go there. But there's also lots of other things that help you really as a teacher also to do research. And it's all for free. You don't have to buy fancy books for that, Completely unnecessary. Same applies to law. I mean, all the examples I've just shown you are about finance, accounting, taxes. Same applies to law. There are websites, for example, this one, you can click on any country here and you get a comprehensive overview of the laws in that country. You can choose a country, or you can choose an area of law. If you have a student says, okay, my topic is consumer protection, you know, you just go to a website and you read a little bit about it, just to get a rough idea, you know, what this is about, this area. There are lots of dictionaries, monolingual dictionaries around, you know, where you can access definitions of specific terms you are not familiar with. This is another one, Black's Law Dictionary. It's also available online. This is actually the largest dictionary, and it's considered an authority as well. So lots of stuff online that you can explore. And I think this is already my last slide. So before I come to my last slide, I believe I've answered the what, the why, and the how. So if you think about it, good luck, and let me say it's possible. Please follow me or connect on LinkedIn if you like. I regularly publish articles there at least once a month, and they are all on ESP topics. And the good thing about these articles is not that they are free. I mean, they're free anyway on LinkedIn, but they only take 3 minutes to read. So it will not take a lot of time. 3 minutes, okay, 2 minutes, 4, yeah, maybe 6, that's an exception. But, you know, I try to keep everything very concise. Everything is relevant. So there's always a collection of key vocabulary, you know, for every area at the end of the article. And as I said, you know, it doesn't take a lot of time. You know, it's like a 3-minute read once a month. And I can promise you, you will get a lot from this. So whether you decide to go into ESP or you're already there, good luck. Thanks for having me. And back to our host, Madam Bestwick. Thank you.
That was such an informative and engaging session, Patrick. You know, I think sometimes people think of ESP as being quite dull, but you made it so engaging. It was great. A couple of questions that I had coming through. So you've kind of said obviously you were a lawyer first, and then you went into teaching, and then you said, you know, if you are a teacher, you can find your niche and kind of learn about the topic. Which do you think tends to happen more? Which direction do people tend to take more often?
Getting into it. So I would say 90% of the people who teach, who specialize in whatever, do not have a background.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the question is, do I need to study law in order to teach lawyers? The answer is clearly no, simply because there are not enough people to begin with. And secondly, you can do it by accepting the challenge and doing a little bit of research. And the easiest thing is ask your students. I mean, your students can also explain things to you. I mean, this is their job anyway. You know, when they talk to their clients, they have to explain things. So I know that the vast majority of people that teach any special subject, banking, insurance, law, accounting, they don't have a background in accounting. One thing, there's only one thing you need to be. We also talked about native speaker and all of that, which is bullshit. There's one thing you need to be. You need to be a good teacher. You need to be good at teaching. So when you have teaching skills and all the skills you basically have to bring to the table and to the classroom, yeah, sensitivity, dealing with different learners and group dynamics, etc., then it's only the technical stuff that's left, you know, and you can get into this. And there's lots of free resources, you know. Sometimes ELTAs, the English Language Teachers Associations, the local ones, sometimes in their CPD programs, sometimes they have also workshops on these topics as well, you know, sometimes. But of course, it's really a niche. There's only very few people who teach accountants or lawyers, let's say.
And I mean, nowadays with so many people teaching online, you said that a lot of the knowledge tends to be quite country specific for some roles, some positions, some careers. Do you think it is possible for people to have an international student base, or is it better for people to direct their niche in one country as well?
Well, it's a nice idea to have an international student base. And I think it might work with topics which are quite similar, also internationally. Banking, insurance, marketing, HR. With legal and tax stuff, I have to say, I don't think so. Legal and tax, accounting and auditing, these will always be national topics. So you really have to target the people in your country. Of course, when you're in the UK, it's a bit of a joke to say, because your students will not be in the UK, usually, at least, yeah. But generally speaking, I mean, the majority of us, we live somewhere outside the UK and US, you know, and wherever we teach, we have to cater for the local market and the local students. I don't think legal English and accounting English in particular is something to branch out, you know, and say, oh, now virtually I want to teach all around the world. You can do that with general English, with business English. You can do it with skills training, certainly, meetings, negotiations, presentations. You can do it with intercultural training, of course. That's international anyway. But I'm afraid law and taxes is something very, very national.
Mm-hmm. And so as well, when you were talking about the publishers creating, or the national publishers producing books, is that because they are very specific to that country?
Yeah. You know, Oxford, Cambridge, Macmillan, and all these other ones, they cater for a worldwide readership. The national publishers cater for national readership. So they are the ones that can accommodate the actual needs. Cambridge and Oxford can't do that because they want to sell their books all around the world. So they have to settle on something. And what they settle on is usually the UK and US or other English-speaking countries, because these are English course books. So they settle on those countries. But this is exactly the reason. And this was actually the chance for the national publishers to put things out which are more relevant and more appealing to the students. 11 years ago, I put out that book with Cornelsen, English for Tax Professionals. And this was really one of the very first books that made reference to Germany, whereas all the other books made reference to England, Australia, or wherever, you know. And this was really making it relevant, you know. And next year, the second edition of that book will come out. That's not the book you talked about, by the way. That's the one for legal assistance. But the one for tax will come out, second edition. And this will be even more relevant because now I've got the experience, you know, of 11 years of using that for 11 years. I know which tasks work and which tasks don't work. This is another thing. When you get into this, you have to experiment. Not everything you will come up with, you know, will work. It's also with Cambridge and Oxford, you know, some of the role plays work, some don't. In my experience, at least, you know, some of the meetings work and some of the meetings don't. Some of the texts are more appealing than others, you know. So this is the same thing, really.
And then as well, with one of the activities that you showed us, you said there was this element of small talk at the beginning. Is general English still an important part of ESP, or does the focus always tend to be on that very technical language?
I would say there's always something to accommodate, no matter how advanced your students are. Generally speaking, when you teach professionals, lawyers, accountants, you name them, they're advanced usually. I mean, all of my students are at least C1. Yeah, this is really, some are even C2 and they still go for this training. But I would say, generally speaking, professionals are on a very decent B2 level at least. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say, B2 or C1 level. On that level, of course, you don't have to teach simple present versus present continuous. I mean, that's clear. But there are still things you can come up with. I mean, you don't have to exclude grammar completely, but of course, the focus should not be on grammar on that level. But you can come up with things they are still struggling with. The third conditional is an example. Gerund is an example, you know. because there's this list of expressions and words that are followed by the gerund. This is definitely an issue also for advanced learners. But of course, you don't have to start at the bottom, you don't have to tell them, what the present tense is or the past tense, And again, identify maybe local issues. Many mistakes our students make are related to their mother tongue because they think in their native language and then they kind of translate. So in Germany, for example, with German students, I always have to talk about the past tense and the present perfect because the past tense has disappeared from German. Nobody is using the past tense anymore. You only see it in literature and in law sometimes, but nobody uses the past tense in German, but in English, it's a tense that exists and is used, So that's even relevant for C1 learners in my case. I have to tell them, when you draft this email, this is not present perfect here in this situation, what you talk about, something you received yesterday or last week or whatever, this is past tense. So there's also some things where you might have to do some research on, the so-called the mother tongue and the common mistakes. Also, false friends are a big issue. False friends, true friends, which are true, which are false, also identifying them. And I would say this is also relevant for advanced learners, definitely. There's a whole thing. Actually, there's an article here on the screen. It's called here, Oh No. Oh No. This is all about mistakes. So I've collected mistakes from German classrooms. And these are mistakes that even C1 learners make that I've put into this article here, this Oh No article. So, and there's a whole range of things that come up again and again, and I've put them all in this article, but this relates to German learners and there will be similarities to other learners as well, but you always have to look at who you are teaching.
I mean, I had one more question, but you've already answered it. I was going to ask about ESP for lower levels, but it sounds as though generally it's a B2 and above that you would expect to be having perhaps more the confidence, the knowledge of the language to be able to communicate their topic well enough to people from other countries.
In most cases, you will not be teaching trainees or apprentices. In most cases, you will teach professionals, many of whom even have a university degree. They are really, really specialized. I mean, every lawyer went to university. I mean, you can't just become a lawyer in Germany without university. Yeah, and this is very much the case. Often you have experienced professionals that ask for such training. So they've already been in the job for a while. They know what they are talking about. They do specialize in something, in their company, in their corporate structure, or as a freelancer or whatever. And then it's usually not the lower levels, really. I mean, the vast majority of training, as I said, will be B2 and above.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for coming along and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us this morning. As I say, it's the first time we've kind of covered this topic in the hub, and so it was really fascinating to find out about it.
Pleasure.
Great. Well, thanks everyone who's been watching. If you've been watching on catch up as well, feel free to drop a message if you've got any comments or any questions. As Patrick said, follow him on LinkedIn. I'll share a link to his profile in the comments section. Have a great day, and I'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.